Welcome to Typebook, home of the Typebook method. We are Chris and Rose, INTJ and INFJ, and we have been video typing people cataloging over 250 public figures. We aim to grow the Typebook into many thousands of individuals for our research and your utilization as a learning resource. You can show your support for our project by becoming a channel member and have access to members-only videos as well as public figure Typebook entries not available on our main channel. In this series, we address some common misunderstandings between two different types. Today, we are breaking down the misconceptions between ENFJ and INFJ.
The most significant thing, in my opinion, is the attitude. By this we mean what Jung called introversion or extroversion.
Yes, the attitude is extremely important because it dictates motives and what people do, largely. By this, we mean the INFJ has introverted attitude and the ENFJ has an extroverted one. And this determines life choices, how investment is spent, and where investment is spent in terms of time and energy.
I think a big problem with people's misunderstanding is that they want to isolate and put into a vacuum all these functions. For years now they've said, you need to study cognitive functions. You won't understand MBTI types unless you study the cognitive functions. And people do that, then they start trying to understand what a cognitive function specifically looks like by itself, which isn't something that exists. It's kind of almost like a waste of time in a way, because what you're studying is an idea. So with people doing this, what they do is they say, well, okay, ENFJ is like an INFJ because they have all the same functions and it's only one letter difference, right? But really the attitude of the first function has so much more weight and is so much more overbearing on the entire stack. It can't escape from the entire stack as a whole. And that means it's more instrumental than people perceive it to be. And that's exactly why the attitude is so significant.
So the INFJ is characterized by an introverted attitude, and that is one of intuition. The ENFJ is characterized by an extroverted attitude, and that is one of feeling. And this makes a huge difference in between the two types.
So MBTI, in its letterization and trying to simplify things, it does an amazing job at that in one aspect, but in another it makes things more complex and convoluted. So for instance, again, like I said earlier, the INFJ is a feeler type, as MBTI would say. The ENFJ is a feeler type, as MBTI would say. But the most important thing here to remember is actually only one of the types is a feeler type, and that's the ENFJ. The ENFJ is a feeler type, first and foremost, how Jung would describe it. And the INFJ is an intuitive type. That changes everything.
So what would we expect to see out there in the real world to spot the differences between the ENFJ and the INFJ, considering the ENFJ is an extroverted feeling type and the INFJ is an introverted intuitive type?
Realistically, if people had a good grasp on what an ESFJ is, then that's what I would suggest to them. It would look more like an ESFJ, but people don't have an interest in ESFJ. They don't want to study ESFJ. They perceive ESFJ to be kind of boring, even though ESFJs are widely popular as people and are mistyped as more special and intuitive types as people perceive them. As for the INFJ, there's a certain mythos behind the INFJ as well, because it is probably the most popular or coveted type that people claim to be, along with INTJ and perhaps a few others. Some of the common characteristics of what they say INFJ is like is true to a degree.
I think the difference right away is going to be an ENFJ will command your attention, and INFJ will not.
When you say capture your attention, what do you mean by that? How is an ENFJ capturing your attention, and whose attention does he or she capture, as opposed to, say, an INFJ who is interested? What are those differences?
The ENFJ is going to reach out and basically grab you around the throat. They will make their presence known, mostly through their communication skills. They like to talk. They like to get right there in the thick of things, get involved with whatever's happening. They can be very provocative in a way.
So ENFJs can vary quite a bit, but the commonality in them, I think, is they love to be social and they like to have people's attention and they like to, I think, give a good experience in that way. They want to be producing good responses, maybe, is a way to put it. They want to be enriching people around them. And again, like, you can put that on ESFJ too. They're very much the same in this way. They like to make people happy and they like to be involved. They're very communal and social kinds of people.
I think the INFJ can be noticed, but not in the ways that they want to be noticed. So I think for an INFJ, we would probably want to be noticed for our observations, for our thoughts, for the way we see things. But we aren't getting noticed in that area when we're out there in the world. I disagree with people who say the INFJ sticks out in the world because we're weird. I don't think that's true. I think we blend in more. I think the reason that we stick out, or the way that we capture attention, is because we're interested in what other people say. We're willing to let other people speak. We want to listen to what other people say. And so that kind of captures a different sort of attention because it draws people to us.
And also, I think you gather attention because you break the mold of what people expect you to be. So they're not noticing you.
Yes.
They think you're something else. And then you surprise them. And this is very similar to my type, INTJ too. They say, I know that kind of person. Oh, wait, you've surprised me. And I think people are unsettled by it a little bit because they don't quite know if you're real. I've always perceived that we are treated a little bit with suspicion because people can't really make out what we are. Or they set their heart on something that they think you are, and then you're not quite right. So then people think,
yes,
is this guy fake? Is this guy insincere?
So there's a subtle way in which we make people suspicious. Whereas I think the ENFJ makes people suspicious in an obvious way because they are grating. They can be aggressive.
Yeah, they're more
they
shameless.
They can be
as well.
Triggering. Exactly.
Think of, like, Cheshire grinning door salesman. He's like so enigmatic, perhaps is the word. He's just on fire. He's almost too good to be true, but he gets you because he's just so full of something. He's got the X factor that makes you feel like, actually, I should probably buy this product. I've noticed this with myself, like being a very analytical person. I've noticed myself taken in by someone such as an ENFJ, perhaps, that has that pre-described enigmatic. We've all seen and heard of various systems promising results yet yielding no consistency. Humanity is complex and nuanced and cannot be systemized by outcomes, cues, graphs, and tick boxes. To see the psychological functions behind behavioral patterns, you can only apply a methodology to typing someone, and that's the typebook method. Consider becoming a channel member to support the project further and provide yourself with new learning opportunities with our exclusive members-only content.
You referenced swimming in the pool. An ENFJ is always going to be swimming in the pool. And they get lost in the pool in a sense, especially when they're young, because they're in the pool, they're swimming with all the other fish, they're worried about what all the other fish are doing. They don't ever step out of the pool to reflect on what's happening in the pool. Whereas the INFJ is in the pool, and they have to continually step out of the pool to be taking in, what have I observed in the pool? And then they have to take it away and dwell on it for a bit before they can get back in the pool again.
Yes, and the pool is social, so to speak.
The social pool.
Outside of the pool is
the mind.
In their head.
Yeah.
It's their thinking. It's their analyticalness. It's their TI. And it's instrumental for both types. But we think more so for the ENFJ because they're so again, back to the attitude, they are a feeling type. They are an FE dominant. They are drawn to people, and they're almost addicted to being out there with people, gathering all this information. But they need to remember that at some point they need to get out of the pool, because they're going to shrivel up.
So this is the irony in it, because the ENFJ would be seen as a better thinker or as a quicker thinker than the INFJ. And that's only because they're more social. They are more talkative. They're more FE than the INFJ. So the INFJ is seen as a slower thinker, when in terms of the stack, it's really the ENFJ that has to work harder to develop their thinking. They have to see the need for it more. I mean, obviously, INFJ has to work on that as well. But we do have a natural tendency to pull away because we are a dominant, introverted intuitive. And that leads us to withdraw ourselves all the time in order to regroup, to return, to measure, to think.
So the differences here are the ENFJ is the feeling type. It's also more of a sensation type. It's got more pull, it's got more weight, more focus on extroverted sensation than an INFJ has. So it's the opposites going on here. More draw, more feeling, more sensation for the ENFJ. Less sensation, more thinking, overall attitude, which leans to more thinking and more isolation, away from people, and drawing energy back from being isolated and having their own time. These are the main differences between the two. And I should probably add, because the INFJ has a lower focus on extroverted sensation, it's last in their slot, although that doesn't dictate sensory ability as such. It does dictate that focus and that time spent and that will to be in that more external environment. That's where the ENFJ has a huge advantage with where their SE slot is and where their grip and focus is much stronger and their will is much stronger. A lot of people mistake ENFJs for being TE types. It's because they're so fast. They have SE higher in the stack and they have FE at the highest. They've got this double whammy of FE reading and SE responsiveness, and they go with it, and they seem, that's part of their charisma. They're quick and they're receptive, and they can seem like they're thinking types, but they're not. They're doing the opposite thing. They're not thinking, they are feeling the room, and they're responding fast and quick because they're an extroverted sensation type.
If you look out on YouTube, INFJs who make videos are not really capable of throwing a lot of videos out there quickly unless they put low effort into it. In other words, if you see an INFJ producing lots of videos, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of attention paid to the thumbnails, the editing. It's not going to be this glossy presentation. It's going to be hit the button, record my thoughts, upload it without much fanfare. Some INFJs don't upload frequently because they want to put a lot of effort into the video. And if that's the case, then they can't upload frequently because it takes too much energy and effort to produce those sorts of videos. It's difficult for the INFJ.
In a lot of ways, the ENFJ is a better INFJ than the INFJ in this regard, because they will put out more content more easier with similar sort of content, and INFJ won't really be able to compete. And the ENFJ's content is going to be more applicable and more
across the board, right?
The ENFJ's content is going to be more applicable to more people, because that's how they're going to do it. Because the ENFJ is not out to make special connections with people. It's to help the most people. That's the motive. That's the extroverted attitude. That's the extroverted feeling. That's not what an INFJ would do. They'd have a different way of doing it. They'd probably be doing it to share their ideas and get recognition for their more intense and complex intuitive thoughts.
Yes, ENFJs really take the bull by the horns. Their dominant FE makes them more aggressive in it. And this is another misconception that FE is harmonious. And I think this is why ENFJs get mistyped a lot of times for being another type, because FE dominant person could not possibly be this aggressive. But feeling is feeling. Feeling is a strong
feeling
thing.
Is not positive or negative.
Yes.
It just is.
Right.
And in that way, harmony looks very different. Like, what is harmony? What is harmonious? You can argue different cases for that in different places of the world. What's polite in certain places of the world is not polite in others. You can't say for a fact that FE is more harmonious. It's just not the case. You know, it just depends on what environment you're in. If you're in an environment that does not value harmony whatsoever, it actually values perhaps individualism and things like that, then the argument falls apart.
Yes, and feeling is a strong thing. And so if you're one of these types that is dominated by feeling, then yes, you can be extremely aggressive. You know, you can behave in ways that people would be shocked by because you are driven by feeling.
People often think, you know, like the bad guys, the robbers, the criminals, they have to be FI people because, you know, it's all about them and stuff, right? But I think there's probably a bit more of a bias towards like thinking FI types. You know, they're low FI and they're thinkers, and you know, they don't get affected when they do crimes by, you know, the bad consequences of their criminality and stuff. That's kind of like the perception, I think. But, you know, in a lot of cases, the opposite is true, actually, and it's the feeler guys. It's the warm, fuzzy FE people that do the crimes. Now, I'm not tarring anyone like uniquely with the same brush here. What I'm saying is, it does not matter. This isn't a question. Committing crimes has no bearing on what type you are. It depends on a lot of things. To say that one's more criminal and one's more warm and fuzzy, generally, it's kind of silly and it shouldn't be taken seriously.
These FE dominant people, they can go too far. They can be quite savage. FE, and I think this is why a lot of these ENFJs out there who are making videos under the title of INFJ, they say they're dangerous. And, you know, I kind of laugh at that because an INFJ, like, I would never consider myself dangerous. I'm too thoughtful in that way. There's something stopping the FE from going all hog wild, right? And that's my NI. Like, it has to be filtered through that. But there's nothing stopping that ENFJ from just losing it, right? I mean, we've seen examples in our own lives from ENFJs who just explode.
So, for instance, consensus may say that, well, if you're FE Dom, then that's your special power, and, you know, like Superman, your special power is flying. The ENFJ's special power is people or whatever. And, like, yeah, feeling it's dodgy. Like, it can go bad, it can go very well.
Yes.
An ENFJ can misread a situation beyond what you could possibly believe to be ever possible, and they can be so convicted and so
and
self-righteous in it that it's quite terrifying.
And this is why so many ENFJ YouTubers out there under the guise of INFJ make so many videos about door slams. It's because they're door slamming people all over the place. Whereas INFJs, we're more thoughtful about this. We're not just going to just become unhinged constantly because we're not driven by dominant feeling. We are more thoughtful in this way. In fact, I think most INFJs, we don't want to talk about door slamming, right? It's just not even interesting to us in that way. It's interesting if we do cut somebody off, but it's because we've built it up to such a point where it's gotten to the time where we have to do it. Whereas I think ENFJs are just cutting people off right and left, especially when they're younger. This is why they say they're dangerous, right? This is why they have this image of themselves. And it's correct because they are like this. They can be ticking time bombs.
Ironically, both of the types have problems with, you know, feeling bad about letting people down or like cutting people out of their lives. But I think the ENFJ is the one that feels so bad about it, but also is so feeling orientated that they're actually more willing to cut people out of their lives just because they do not want to tolerate the negative effects of saying, oh, by the way, I'm cutting you out of my life. Right. So therefore, I think they're more likely to door slam, especially when you take into account the fact that they're out there swimming in the pool. They're going out further in the ocean, socializing, and they're meeting more people than the INFJ. The INFJ is reluctantly social in many ways, and ironically is more aloof than people give them credit for. It's just they are more compelled than, say, my type INTJ to be social. And I think it takes them more time to get to the point where they're like, no, I don't like this person. I'm going to strategize my way out in order to avoid that difficult conversation or that awkward moment where I say I don't want to be around them anymore. They'll find a way more strategically and more low-key. They'll plan it out. The ENFJ is not going to do that. Mm-hmm. Low TI.
Yes.
Very FE. They're going to do it their way. They're not going to take the brunt of it. They're going to go riding off into the sunset.
Yes, INFJ is definitely more thoughtful in this way. We're going to think of a plan. How can we accomplish this? Whereas the ENFJ is not going to think, they're just going to do.
Yes,
that's how they are.
Cut them off and then ignore their message and say la 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 with their fingers in their ears because it's about them and they've decided this and it's not good for them. They're just a bit more self-assertive in that way.
Yes, they definitely are. They're definitely more self-assertive. They're definitely more aggressive. I mean, there's an ENFJ out there who is running a boot camp. I mean, that is total ENFJ style. I don't see myself as a military style dictator ruling over all the soldiers, right? I don't see myself in that way. If I have a classroom of students, I'm not thinking of it like a boot camp, right?
Yeah, boot camp is very, it's strong. It's got a lot of connotations with it, which is like, we're going to shape you up kind of thing.
Yes.
It's much more, it's assertive. That's what it is.
Yeah. And of course it is, because it's driven by feeling. And feeling is what wants to get in there and cause you to feel it, right? Whether it's the ISFP with all the drama, they want you to feel something. I want you to feel what I'm feeling. That's what feeling is. Whether it's the ESFJ who does all these kind acts. I want you to feel my happiness. I want you to feel my joy in doing this. Feeling is a strong motivator. And I don't think people recognize that enough. So I'm going to read something that I took directly from an ENFJ who is making INFJ content. But it's very interesting because she is an ENFJ and she speaks like one, and she actually gives very good advice to ENFJs. But listening to it, you can hear that this is ENFJ talk. This is not INFJ talk. She says, what we do encounter over and over again, people getting triggered by us, people getting intimidated by us. The more I'm being myself, the more I dare to be uniquely me, the more people act in a way that they are being intimidated because they lash out. Others get mean towards us without us having a thought that we want to harm someone. We trigger people. We trigger people a lot. We have to understand we are intimidating. We can't find true peace until we accept this about ourselves and get love and appreciation for ourselves and a purpose for our lives through the fact that we are intimidating and triggering. We are not triggering enough. We are not intimidating enough. We have to make a choice. Would I rather speak my truth or be nice? Am I going to make people feel good in the moment, or am I going to do what I believe is best for them in the moment long term? I want to be seen and appreciated for who I am. The more I am myself, the more I'm going to trigger people. And an INFJ would listen to that, and that's aspirational. An INFJ wants to see themselves this way, right? Like, oh, I trigger people with with the truth, and I'm not afraid to give people what they want. But it's what you said earlier. We have to do it our way. We have to do it more strategically. She's really saying, go out there and be FE, grab the bull by the horns, trigger these people, be the protagonist. Do it and be proud of it, because that's who you are as a feeling dominant person, as an extroverted feeler.
Yeah, all of that is extroverted assertion.
Exactly.
It's saying, I feel like I want to help people. And when I do help people, when I spot something intuitively, might add, about someone, and I say, if I'm nice about it, I'm ignored. But if I'm tough on them, if I give them the tough love, so to speak, then they will know. And I'm going to be that bad person for the good of them. And I'm going to come in strong, and I'm going to say, this is what you need. You need to listen to me, because that's how I get listened to, by causing some upset, some hard truths that gets people to act. That's feeling.
Yes. And I admire that as an INFJ. I admire that about an ENFJ. However, I recognize that is not me. And that is not how I take care of things in the world. That's not how I navigate. I have a more subtle way of doing things.
Your attitude is not extroversion. That's their thing. They can do that.
Exactly.
They can be there. They can act in the moment. They can be present and responsive, and they've got all the qualities to do that. That's their strategy. For the INFJ, that's very aspiring. That's an aspiring quality to have. And it's almost like you see it and you wish you could do it, but that's not for you. You have to find your way of doing it.
Exactly.
It's more subtle. Has more depth to it in some ways, and in some ways it's more harder hitting too. Has to be more on an individual level, I think.
Yes. And the reason I say aspirational is because listening to the ENFJ speak, it convinces me to be more me. It makes me want to be more of myself. And I think this is what the ENFJ is good at, is helping people to be more of themselves, whatever they are. It's teaching them to believe in themselves and their strengths. And this is why the ENFJ does very well as motivational speakers on YouTube with these huge channels. This is why they do well, because they reach in there and they say, be the best you can be.
And I think it's particularly the case for the INFJ to be particularly inspired, because they're speaking the same philosophy as you. You take different angles on it. The ENFJ has a different way of doing it. It's the extroverted attitude strategy. Well, in some ways it's the extroverted attitude and it's the feeling strategy to the intuitive philosophy, the NF philosophy, the intuitive feeling philosophy. And for the INFJ, you have the introverted attitude strategy to the same thing. Yeah, so in reality, the ENFJ is actually quite a lot different from the INFJ. And I would encourage people to study Jung's way of relaying his theory in terms of the 8 types, because there's information there that exposes these misconceptions, which are reinforced by the MBTI letterings and the cognitive functions in isolation problem.
Thank you for watching this video. Please give us a like, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment or typing suggestion, and share this video. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel memberships, which can be accessed with the join button below the title of this video. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we'll see you on the next video.